My child, come sit with me. I have a story to tell you. A story of a birthday I will never forget. Though perhaps I wish I could. I remember when I was young. Oh, so young. My husband, God bless him, he used to bring me a single red rose every year. Just one, but it carried all his love. And my children, oh, how their little hands would run to me with crayon-scribbled cards, shouting, "Happy birthday, Mama!" Their laughter, their joy, it was the sweetest music. But this year my birthday was different. I woke up that morning with hope in my heart, thinking surely my son would call. Surely my daughter would visit. I waited, hours passed, sun climbing higher, birds singing outside my window, yet inside nothing. Silence. Nothing but the ticking clock and my own sighs. I tried to tell myself, perhaps they are busy, perhaps they will remember later. But deep inside, I knew the truth. My children had moved on. And I was just an old woman sitting in an empty house, shadows dancing around me. I cooked myself a simple meal, my hands trembling, and I sat down alone. The chairs at the table seemed to mock me, remembering laughter that no longer existed. The walls whispered stories of the past, of birthdays filled with love, warmth, and chaos. But today, just silence. I lit a single candle and whispered to myself, "Happy birthday, old lady." My voice cracked, echoing across the empty room. And I tried to hold back the tears, but they fell anyway, silently. And then knock. At first, I thought my heart was playing tricks on me. Who would come knocking at this hour? Hesitantly, I walked to the door. My hands shook, my heart pounded. Maybe it was my son. Maybe it was someone who remembered me. I opened the door slowly, and there he was. A young man. A stranger. Barely in his 20s. He held a small cake in his hands. His clothes were worn, shoes dusty. Yet his smile was warm, brighter than the candles on my lonely cake. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said softly. I know this might seem strange, but happy birthday." I froze. My lips parted. My heart had stopped. Who was this? How did he know? He lowered his eyes and said, "I walk past your house every evening. Today, I saw you sitting by the window. You looked lonely. I thought maybe it's your birthday. So, I bought this." He held out the cake. Cheap frosting, slightly melted, but to me it was priceless. I took it with trembling hands. Tears rolled freely down my face. No treasure could ever compare to this kindness. We sat together that night. We lit the candle. He sang. Ofki, yes. But his voice carried warmth, care, love. And for the first time that day, I felt remembered. I felt seen. My child, listen closely. What happened after that knock on my door? It changed everything. Stay with me. Listen to the rest of my story. You will see the truth of family, love, and betrayal. Don't go anywhere. After that night, I could not stop thinking about the young man who had come to my door. I had lived so long, my heart had grown accustomed to silence, to being invisible. And yet, here was someone, stranger though he was, who had seen me, who had cared enough to step through that door. My children, my own flesh and blood, had forgotten me. But this boy, he reminded me that kindness still existed in the world. The next morning, I woke up with a strange mix of hope and sorrow. I tried to call my children again, but as always, no answer. The phone sat there on the table, silent, judging me in its own way. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched the world continue without me. I felt my age more than ever, the ache in my bones, the gray in my hair, but also a quiet resilience. I had survived worse. I would survive this too. Days passed. The young man visited again, timidly, with nothing more than a smile and sometimes a small loaf of bread or a bouquet of wildflowers. Every time he came, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Warmth, laughter, companionship. Slowly, I began to look forward to his visits, counting the hours until I would see him at my doorstep. And then one evening he came with something different. Not a gift, not a cake, not even a word of small talk. He came with a letter, folded carefully in his hands. I took it, unsure why a stranger would hand me a letter. But when I opened it, my eyes widened. It was from my son. My hands trembled as I read. The words were formal, almost cold, apologizing for missing my birthday, saying he had been busy, saying he hoped I was well. No warmth, no love, just obligation. My heart sank. All those years I had nurtured, cooked, cleaned, given everything I had to raise my children, and this was what I got in return. I felt anger rising like a storm in my chest. But beneath it, deeper than anger, was a pain so sharp it took my breath away. How could my own son forget me like this? How could they all forget me? I had given them my life, my love, everything. And yet here I was alone, waiting for a knock that never came. I looked at the young man, and I wanted to tell him to go. I wanted to push him away and lock myself in the silence I knew so well. But I couldn't. Something about him, something about his patience, his kindness, it made the ache in my heart a little less heavy. Over the next few days we began talking more. I told him stories about my husband, my children when they were little, the hardships we had faced, the joys we had shared. He listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. And slowly I realized something. For the first time in years I had someone who truly cared about me. Not because I was useful, not because I was family, but because I was human. But then the inevitable came. One day while I was preparing tea, I heard voices outside. Familiar voices. My son, my daughter-in-law, my grandchildren. They had finally come. First I felt relief. I wanted to run to them, to hug them, to show them that I had been waiting all this time. But as they entered, laughing and talking amongst themselves, something inside me shifted. Their laughter sounded hollow. Their smiles forced. They hadn't come because they remembered me. They had come because they had seen me on the news. The story of the lonely grandmother had spread. And suddenly, I was important again. I watched silently as they poured themselves tea, barely glancing at me. And then I remembered the young man. He had come without expectation, without judgment, without a camera or a story to tell. His visits were pure, his heart genuine. My children, they had never cared like that. Tears filled my eyes as I realized something I had not allowed myself to admit. My heart did not belong to those who had abandoned me. It belonged to those who loved me when no one else would. My child, if you are hearing this, the rest of the story will shock you. Stay with me because what I did next, oh, it changed everything. It made my children see me differently, but not in the way they expected. The next morning, I woke with a quiet resolve. I had lived long enough to know that life is not about waiting for apologies, or for love to be given by those who have forgotten you. Life is about standing tall, even when the world ignores you. So when my children arrived that day, I didn't run to them. I didn't cry or beg for attention. I watched them from my chair by the window, my hands folded, my eyes calm but sharp. They came in, carrying gifts and forced smiles, expecting tears, expecting gratitude, expecting the old me who would forgive everything without question. But I was no longer that woman. I told them softly, almost casually, I see you have remembered my birthday. My voice was calm, almost too calm. They laughed nervously, thinking I was joking. But I wasn't. I waited by the window, I said, hoping you would call, hoping you would come. But instead, a stranger did what you could not. He came without being asked. He came because he cared. My daughter-in-law's smile faltered. My son's hands clenched. I could see the shame flicker in their eyes, though they tried hard to hide it. I continued, this young man, he brought me cake, not because he had to, not because he owed me anything, but because he wanted to. And while you, my own children, forgot me, he remembered. They shifted uncomfortably, trying to think of something to say, some excuse. But there was none. There never would be. And then I did something I never thought I could. I called the young man. Come in, my child, I said. I want you to meet the family I once hoped would love me as you do. When he entered, my children froze. They saw what I saw every day, kindness, warmth, respect. They saw a young man who treated me as a human being, not as a burden or a faded memory. I invited him to sit, and we began sharing tea. The conversation flowed naturally between us, laughter and stories mixing effortlessly. And as I watched my children, I realized something. They were uncomfortable not because of anything I said, but because they were seeing the truth reflected in someone else. Someone who loved me without expectation. It hurt me, yes it did. But it also freed me. I realized I did not need their validation, their apologies, or their affection. I had something stronger, love given freely without pretense. Later that day, I quietly slipped out the cake the young man had brought again. We walked into the garden and I told him, you have no idea how much this means to me. You have reminded me that life still holds beauty, even when family forgets. He smiled a gentle, understanding smile and said, "You deserve to be remembered always. Not because of who your children are, but because of who you are." And in that moment I felt lighter. A burden I had carried for years, the weight of being forgotten, began to lift. My children, they watched in silence. They had no words, only guilt hidden behind forced smiles. But it no longer mattered to me. My heart had found someone who loved me, truly loved me, and nothing else could take that away. My child, listen carefully. The final part of this story, the last chapter, is where everything comes together, where my children finally realize what they lost, but not before it was too late for them to change. You must stay, because what I did next, it will leave you speechless. Days passed after that meeting, and my children stayed, trying awkwardly to fill the silence with meaningless chatter, attempting to win back a love they had neglected for so long. But I was calm. I had found peace in the kindness of someone who had come without expectation, without obligation, without the weight of history or blood ties. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with orange and pink, I called my children to the garden. Their faces showed confusion, anticipation, and a tinge of fear. I held a small box in my hands, wrapped simply, nothing extravagant. I placed it gently on the table before them. "This," I said softly, "is for you. Not because you deserve it, but because I once loved you enough to give it." They opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, old family pictures, moments of happiness, birthdays long ago, laughter frozen in time. And beside the photographs, letters I had written over the years, letters I never sent, letters full of love, advice, and dreams for them. Tears filled their eyes. They whispered apologies, excuses, words I no longer needed. I listened quietly, letting their guilt wash over them. I did not interrupt. I did not scold. I only waited for the lesson they needed to see. Then I told them, "You cannot give back the time you forgot. You cannot reclaim the days you ignored me. But someone else, someone outside our blood, reminded me what love truly is. He reminded me that respect, care, and kindness are not owed. They are given freely. And that is what matters." My son's face turned pale, my daughter-in-law's hands trembled. They had seen me broken, alone, forgotten. And now they saw me strong, radiant, loved, by someone they never thought could matter. The young man smiled at me, quietly, humbly, and I realized then that my heart had chosen him, not over my children, but for showing me the love my family had forgotten to give. That love did not erase the past, but it healed me. They stayed silent after that. Their apologies sounded hollow now, and I could no longer hear them as I once did. I had learned a truth older than myself. Love that is earned, freely given, is stronger than blood. And family is not always who shares your name. It is who shares your heart. From that day on, I lived differently. I no longer waited for anyone to remember me. I no longer counted on empty words or hollow gestures. I cherished every smile, every act of kindness, every moment that truly mattered. And when I sat by my window waiting, I no longer felt lonely. Because I had learned that sometimes the strangers who see you are the ones who teach you what family really means. Ah, my child, if you have listened this far, remember this. Never wait for love to come from where it is expected. It may come from the most unlikely place. A stranger, a friend, a soul who simply cares. And when it comes, embrace it. For it is more precious than any gift, any word, any blood tie that forgets you. Even now, when I light my candle on my birthday, I smile. Not because my children came, not because gifts were given, but because I know that kindness exists. And that is enough. That is everything.